Welcome to Mercy Volunteer Corps' International Service live Q&A. Tonight, Anna will be sharing about her experiences serving as a Mercy volunteer in Georgetown, Guyana. If you have any questions for her or for me about the program, you can chat those here to us and we'll answer them live for you. Anna, would you like to take a moment to introduce yourself? Tell us where you're from, when and where you did your service, and what you're up to now.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much for having me. So I'm originally from Connecticut, from Fairfield, and I served in Georgetown, Guyana from 2019 to 2020. So COVID hit while I was there. And now I am living in Boston, which is where I did my undergrad as well. And I'm working as a technology consultant.
Great. Tell us a little bit about your service in Guyana. What was your job, and what did you do there?
Yeah. So my service placement was at Bosco Academy, which is like the private primary school that's attached to Bosco Orphanage, which is run by the Sisters of Mercy. And so it's a boys' orphanage. And so the boys who are at the orphanage, who are primary school age, will go to this school that is at the campus. I was a fifth grade teacher for most of the year, but started off the year by being a special education teacher. Was just a helper in that classroom before taking over the fifth grade class. My community, there were 4 of us, and it was awesome. We lived like a few villages down from where I served. We all had different service placements, except there were 2 of us who were at Bosco. But it was cool to hear about the other service placements, live in community and live in the local community.
What was it like? We talk about at Mercy Volunteer Corps that we approach service in the spirit of mutuality, and to serve compassionately. What did you learn in your experience about what it means to serve in the spirit of mutuality?
I feel like that was huge for me in processing service and processing why I served, just what that looks like, and even talking about it with other people too. I feel like people have such an array of reactions and responses, both in Guyana and since coming back in the US. And so I feel like something I think a lot about when I think of the spirit of mutuality, is just that this is service that's rooted in relationship, and that there's a difference between being with and doing for. And so I feel like I just chewed on that a lot, as I was serving, of what does it mean to be with in this moment, and how can I be with before I do for. Just that means a whole bunch of different things, but practically a lot of times it meant not assuming needs, and asking, and before just going and doing what you think people would want. And I think that's both spirit of mutuality and compassionate service. It's also there's just more emotion and relationship involved in compassionate service than a service that you're really emotionally disconnected from and just doing tasks. And so I was grateful to have relationship and have time to build that relationship, time to build trust. I think there's something significant about doing service for an entire year rather than just a weekly thing, or just even for a few months stint. I think that there's just time to build relationships, build trust, to will serve from that place of genuine relationship.
How did you build relationships outside of your service site? What were some of the other relationships that you made while in Guyana, either in community or in the local Guyana community?
Yeah, great question. I feel so I'll talk about community first. My community, they're kind of your built-in family. At first, you're dropped in a country you're unfamiliar with and culture you're unfamiliar with 3 other people that I was unfamiliar with, but I was living with them. So you're with them 24/7. You're all having this shared experience, even though you're experiencing it super differently. So I think there's some degree of just relational connection there, whether there's natural connection or not. And so that I think is kind of the first like new relationship point that I had. But in terms of having a relationship with Guyanese people, there were a whole bunch of different ways that we like met other people. I really appreciated just our street and our neighborhood. I feel like in Guyana, people are just outside all the time. And so it's really easy to, as you're walking down the street, just stop and like have a conversation with all of your neighbors. One of my community mates was infamous for taking like an hour and a half to walk down the street because she would just stop and talk to everybody. But I love that. And like we like would babysit the kids next door and stuff like that. And so that I feel like really did feel like community and just like getting to know people. And then also finding peers. I feel like finding peers just kind of happened in a whole bunch of different ways. But we ended up working at a school with a girl who was about our age, was Guyanese. And so we would hang out with her a lot and her two sisters. There were former volunteers who had like introduced us to a few different people. And so they're like people who like have been friends with like whomever the volunteers are for years, which is cool, and just like have different relationships with different groups. But it's also just making friends by meeting people, trying new things, signing up for things, and just like going for it and wanting to make yourself available for a relationship.
Yeah. What were, there are so many great things about serving abroad. And one of them is that it can be really challenging because that gives you the opportunity to grow and change and learn about yourself and about the world around you. What are some of the ways that you were challenged in your experience, and what have you carried with you from that?
Yeah, I think first, just kind of living completely in a different culture and being 100% immersed for a really long time in a culture I was unfamiliar with, in a geographic location I was unfamiliar with just like all of these new experiences. That was like both the biggest gift and the biggest challenge, I think, in some ways. And by that, I mean, I feel like just the like self-awareness that I feel like I had to figure out how to have, that like even now I feel like I just am more aware of like the things I do, even speaking like in a cultural way, even within my community, we all had different cultures that we were bringing to the table too. And so I've never been more aware of like, wow, I do that thing that like I just find really normal, but like other people don't do that, or like that's just like a super cultural thing that I do, or way that I think about something too. That culture really does go beyond like just the things that we think about first, of like food and what you wear and what holidays you celebrate and things like that. But it really does like help determine like the way that we think about things in our worldview. So I think that just really figuring out like, okay, how do I think about things? And what of that is like something that I like and appreciate, and like what are things that I want to change and want to like pick up. And so just having that like right in your face, just you need to have self-awareness. And I think the other thing about living in Guyana, or just doing a year with MVC in general, this could be domestic too, is living in community. And I feel like living in community, I already talked about how I loved living in community, and it really is a way to jump into a relationship really well. But community it's different than roommates. And so you're really doing life on life with one another, going to hard places. I have never had so much conflict, but also have never had so much healthy conflict resolution. And so I think that like the way that I do relationships with other people, I think even years later, is healthier because of the way that like we were in it and wanting to go deep with one another, wanting to push through. And that I think just the like having new people that you're trying to build a relationship with, on top of all of you being in a new culture and all of you just like experiencing so many new things, there's just like stress and strain and exhaustion, that like I had to figure out how to rest well, and like take care of myself in that way too. So yeah, community, culture, self-awareness.
Yeah, thank you. Thinking back, so most of the people watching tonight are considering serving in Guyana with MVC. So thinking back to you at this stage, what was kind of your discernment process like? How did you decide between international and domestic service? What about MVC or Guyana really spoke to you?
Yeah. I think so for me personally, part of it was like practical things. The interesting thing about my year with MVC was I took a gap year in the middle of college. And so that like just my stage of life, even my age, like different things like that kind of geared me towards different, like as I was just starting different programs or international or domestic. And so yeah, thinking about a lot of different, there's so many different volunteer organizations. And so thinking about like differences of those, there were some just like practical things. The MVC like is so relational and so willing to like be accommodating and like was willing to talk me through like my situation and everything, which was awesome. But I think as I kind of just like more high level discerned like what does it look like for me to do a year of service and specifically do a year of service internationally, I feel like there are lots of like different aspects of my processing, but I feel like the one thing that stands out to me is I feel like I normally in decision making I like talk to a lot of people, and I feel like I did, but looking back I think that's something that's really important. It's just like sitting with yourself alone, and figuring out like you can't say yes to a year of service like because someone else thought it was a good idea or someone else had a good experience and you want to replicate that. Like it really does have to be something that you're fully into. Because if you're not in, then you're gonna be miserable. People around you are gonna be miserable. And so I think that was something like sitting alone with myself. I'm a Christian and I ended up just praying a lot, and really like asking God, and like being alone with God and praying about it. And so if that's you, I would definitely recommend that. And I think also just like I feel like I did a lot of just like checking my heart of like, okay, what am I looking for? What do I want? And like being really real with myself of like what were my intentions and like what was I looking to get out of it? Because I think that like we're all like looking to get something out of it. And so figuring out that, and talking about that with MVC staff, they're all amazing. Love you guys. They like are so willing to answer questions. But also like people who've done it before. I feel like just hearing other people's experiences was helpful. Again, with the understanding that like your experience is going to be so different than anybody else's. But hearing like different perspectives, I think was really helpful.
Yeah, and that's part of like the built-in piece of our discernment and application process is you first apply for Mercy Volunteer Corps, and then you interview with an alum of the program, which is a great opportunity for you to, hear more about what the experience is like, ask them your questions, and then we have a discernment day where you're able to meet other people who are interested in service, meet some alumni, and prayerfully really sit with this idea of going internationally to serve, and figuring out if it's the right next step for you. Thinking about who should serve with MVC and why should someone serve with MVC?
Good question. Yeah, thinking about who, I feel like I said this of like you got to say yes for yourself and like want to do it yourself. I feel like people who like want to do it, there's really not like a like this is the mold of someone who like this is, I don't know. Like I said, I did a gap year in the middle of college, and like there were people in previous communities who were retired and doing it after they had like been working for a really long time. And so I think that like there are these so many like stigmas of like, this is the kind of person that does a year of service. And so throw that out the window. But I think just like the like saying, the like desire to do it, and wanting to do like all aspects of it too. I think that was something that like, even like within my community, we talked a lot about of like, of like what felt exciting and easy to say yes to. Like for me, like teaching felt really exciting and easy to say yes to, is something I like was passionate about specifically in that context. But like, is community something you're excited about? Like, are you excited to build relationship with other people that you're living with? Are you excited to build relationship with locals, to like genuinely try and make friends, and things like that? And so, and then I think like being honest with things that you're not excited about, that like, just like the honesty, even if it's just yourself. I think in terms of someone who like is willing to be honest. Sorry, what was the second part of the question? Who should?
No, you're good. Yeah, I think just to like reiterate what you were saying, like, throw it out the window. There's no specific mold of who is a Mercy volunteer. What brings people together in this space is our shared values: the compassionate service, the social justice, spirituality, simplicity, and community, is what it's all about. The second part is, what advice do you have for someone who's in this process right now?
Easier said than done, but I feel like I've like said some of my things with this. But really try to like think about all aspects of it. Like, I don't know, I feel like I found myself like trying to think of like, okay, what really is like the cost of doing this? And not, I don't mean that like financially, but just like the cost of like you're not going to be home for like Thanksgiving or Christmas or Easter, like all of these big holidays and stuff like that, which some people are really used to that and some people are not. But you're in like a different cultural context for a long time. Just like things to be like aware of and like thinking about. And then Andrew just listed off like the different pillars of MVC, like thinking through all of those, like think of like living simply, that can look 1.5 million different ways. But even like as you're discerning whether you'd want to even like do MVC, thinking about, okay, what would that look like for me to live simply? Like, is that something I actually can commit to? And so I think just like not being one tracked of like, this is the part that I'm excited about and this is the thing that I'm excited about. And you don't have to be excited about the entire thing. Like it's okay for things to feel like scary or unknown. I like definitely had those, and even things like, as much as, like I said, easier said than done to be like, this is the entire experience. Obviously there's so much too that like it's just going to come up. But I think as much of the like preparation of like, okay, do I actually want to do this? Am I prepared for this? And just like, what similar experiences have you had? Like, how can you bring those to the table, and like what do you feel like is going to be an easy thing for you?
Yeah, I'm hearing you say throughout this of like a sense of like openness to the whole experience. Like, there will be things you like and there will be things that you're maybe less enthusiastic about, and that's okay as long as you're open to it and open to the growth and experience that this can be for you. So I think that's all the questions we have for tonight. Thanks, Anna, for sharing a little bit of your story with us, and thanks to everyone who watched and tuned in. If you have any questions about Mercy Volunteer Corps or would like to have a conversation with an alum of the program, let us know. We're happy to hook you up so that you can have a really in-depth conversation about what the experience can be like for you. We are accepting applications right now for August of 2023. And you can get that application at mercyvolunteers.org, and you can contact us at recruitment@mercyvolunteers.org. Thanks again and have a great night.